The line of the oppression, I'm going to notice, therefore, would be happening from my perspective within the Yugoslavian matrix, would have been crowned by Singidunum, Belgrade, capital city, run by Irish/American lobby, very much associated to that ancient presence of Celts in that region, that have been since then to present times crafting the politics of the region and using the smaller states there, including Israel, as some kind of proxy zones for their own political appetites. Therefore, if we follow, that is where they continue to excavate Alexander as the main stamp of the entire region, main political stamp mark of the entire region. Another political stamp mark is Jesus. Both of them very much in service to mainstream political civilizational establishment. Rather implemented within the system and used in the system, one as the most famous bull, the other as the most famous sacrificed son. So you don't have, in both cases of scenario, you don't have a winning position there. Going further, the line of oppression would be reaching the points of Britannia, England as a center, rather than Ireland, which in which scenography again we have phenomena of son of a father via the developed since then religious narrative, well-developed religious narrative. We have a son of the father protocol here emerging, father being of course England, and the peripheries as Scotland and Ireland playing the son, which as you will notice again, it's not the winning figure, neither Northern Ireland in that context as the other son of the family is not winning figure. What is winning figure in the entire Britishness is the father protocol itself, which is bringing entire narrative all the way to Babylon again. Next stage of such historic development is USA, where you have we have a very similar situation happening as in England. Again, everything is in the context sons of fathers. And although they are conducting in the recent human history the entire devastation over the region, as Alexander was doing it in a given time, he continued to be the victim figure in that entire saga rather than a winner. A winner here is not America. Winner is a fatherland of America. It's who is the father of America. Again, bringing us all to Babylonians. We are talking here about 2 millenniums of human history, existing very much in the format of Russian babushka, unveiled, withheld sub-systems or proxy systems that are implemented within the folded history, which unfolds today to the fatherland again and never stopped being in the name of God or the Highly Father, that is surfacing everything and everyone else. Of course, now people are more and more bravely going forward, talking about a real history of humanity that was very much multi-God protocol. They were not certainly historically evolving around idea of one God. The idea of God in previous times was much more existing within various other kind of stories about various experiences about humans in their entire human history, about how they would relating to sky and how they would understand sky. We have a variety of historical texts written there, as far as is going the idea of embodied in Buddhism, although one would say later, it would certainly be earlier, about earlier awareness of our energetic configuration, rather, before we talk about any kind of physical encounter, about other physical dominions, which of course left enough records in previous history. And today will need to be a reminder, of course, that the sky is not that much of a simple story, and it will need to be dealt with accordingly. Now, as much as everything seems here to, in recent history, especially as the one associated to mainstream political platform, as everything seems to some kind of Babylonian and beyond Babylonian, some kind of extraterrestrial entities. I have been living in New Zealand more than 30 years, and I have noticed that they have a certain, as earlier civilizations, very much bringing records there in much more native ways, are very much present records of earlier beings living on the territories, projected somewhere in the movies as it is Star Wars, for example, certain gadgets that very much remind to what later become, for example, Sunnis and Shia in Northern Hemisphere, in Middle East especially. Shia also, in Serb language, for example, translates in neck, bird neck. It is in reference to chicken or bird neck, actually bird neck. Now, again, returning to New Zealand, you have very strong encounter about birds, but also there are certain subjects here. Birds here are rather metaphysical. They can actually talk to you. They basically, especially in my encounter, they bring certain kind of related, or I would say metaphysical kind of noise. They're involved in some kind of Hollywood alike scenography, like I'm casting some kind of movie here, and everything, including birds, are talking to me in the context of my story and what I do. It is more like a Hollywood scenario. It wouldn't surprise me to be exactly something like that as well, since via the region where I'm born, Hollywood is very close to me and would not be surprised me to be here. But beyond that, I have to notice that there is a solid heritage in New Zealand about gadgets. Masks exist in form of masks, very traditional, that are depicting two different physical bodies that are reflecting basically identities as it is Shia and Sunni. So, which means that we cannot speak exactly about some kind of extraterrestrial entities when we are going to talk about Babylonians, because they rather connect to certain bio-entities that exist in New Zealand. And to the extent that New Zealand would have a shortcut presence in England, and England certainly for quite some time was influencing to great an extent entire Northern Hemisphere, it would not be that much of a puzzle how New Zealand environment came to be such significant player within the crafting of Northern Hemisphere. So I would not be willing to go too much with this lately projected supreme beings standing behind Babylonians, or Serbs for that matter. If I can find the artifacts in New Zealand existing in much more bio format, very typical for this planet rather than for other worlds. and also taking for themselves more of a saintly positions, then one can gain such impression if thinking about these entities as bioforms of the planet. So that is the statement I'm going to enclose in that direction, and would therefore expect that balloon called Babylon to get reduced in size altogether, and that we pay attention, close attention now to events in England beyond that scenography, but rather getting New Zealand much more in perspective and trying to understand what has happened there in the previous history, and then based on such realizations and new knowledge, craft our present relation to our history and the world in which we live. Since I'm making this revelation, it is some sort of a moral weight on me in regard to what would be consequences of such sudden revelations. So I would like to call upon United Nations chapters of protection of native sites, or something that would come in category of biospecies, protection of biospecies. I think this would fall in that category as matter of certain restriction to unlimited access of public to the sites and to the entire event. I insist on some kind of hierarchy. My entire work is about building most correct hierarchy of organized society. I believe in regulatives, regulations, and ultimate correctness. It is very hard to judge the previous times. It is very hard to assume that anyone in previous times was correct in the sense how we understand political correctness, for example, or any other correctness today. Just 100 years ago, everything, the fields were completely different in terms of what can go and how it can go forward. There was very much a rule. There were very little rules in what in prevalence was rather a very predatory nature of living on the planet. I can't see why someone would be discriminated in that regard. Our past, planetary past, was very much cruel and predatory. Let's do not now throw everything just to one little account. It was all based on opportunism. Even just the narrative is just a year ago, just a few years ago. Well, I have been promoting my work. The narrative prevailing all across the planet like a disease was opportunism, like a disease spreading across the alleged humanity that was equally very much eager to take the highest certification on the exactly same account as well in the same time. So no, I would not be opening New Zealand to the planet. I am enclosing this analysis as a matter of my perceived rather hierarchical entitlement to bring this level of discussion within properly charted hierarchical order, which I'm not willing to dismantle, rather to improve. Either we are talking United Nations or we are talking about certain inherited imperial and monarchical corridors of genetic highlights that have been noticed in all of the historic times and will need today. I would certainly be willing to employ a certain level of revision in our comprehension how history was really built and how civilization was built, either in terms of classic historical terms or in terms of civilizational build, and how we put certain order as in a context of organized society as intelligent beings, rather than now to unleash some kind of stampede, similarly as in the way how America was built. I don't like the way how America was built. I would certainly not like to replicate the same scenography now to build a planet in the new age, or the new age accordingly, to look like a wild stampede. I would expect rather much higher civil behavior and civil order accordingly. Of course, the question here would be immediate. This is going to leave us no time to take another breath. Would be what kind of genetic intervention has been employed on the planet. We certainly can talk about various aspects of what looks as genetic devaluation as well, from what would be the standard of human, how we see ideal human. Appears to be that ideal human continue to be a rather over ideal approach, like some kind of far-reached, hard-to-reach standard, rather than actually concept or sense of or position of normality. Appears to be going further and further away from us. It is as someone is taking from us our normality, the standard of normality, how we would perceive a normal human. We continue to drive in some kind of direction of various genetic animals. I think Disneyland kicked off recently exactly in such kind of political orientation. And certainly it is subject that deserve our attention without any further delay equally.